Hey everyone, welcome. We've got Dakota Dickerson here with Stratus Racing. Dakota, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself? How did you first get started racing?
I first got started racing doing go karts. My dad was into racing. My grandma was also into racing. They both did go karts growing up. Growing up, I always did go karts. Actually had a racing school here, rode Atlanta in Skip Barber. That's how I transitioned into cars, and then from there did open wheel, some sports cars, and then eventually prototype racing.
Awesome. And when was your first WRL race?
My first WL race was back in 2021. It was with Stratus in the NP01, not much has changed since then. But it was at NOLA Motorsports Park. We were doing pretty good. Our very first race, we were actually leading and then caught on fire. So not the most successful first event, and we've made some significant improvements since then. But my first race in WL was in 2021.
Awesome. And back then, what class were you guys running?
So back in 2021, WRL had a different class structure. So back then we were in GTO, which is still the same power to weight class that we are in now in GTU. But back then they had everybody bundled together in the GTO and what is now known as GTU class.
Awesome. And when did they make that transition?
So we did what was GTO in 2021 and 2022. And at the end of the 2022 season, we had some pretty good success in WRL with the NP01 in the Sebeco platform. And so in 2023, they created a class called GTU, which is same power to weight as GTO, but for all the cars that had a minimum windshield height of 42.5 inches and also weighed under 2,400 pounds. And that started in 2023.
Okay, awesome. And when that class first started, obviously it was probably a lot of Sebecos out there. Anything different about the class now than when it first got started?
We've obviously seen a lot of growth, particularly this past year. Like you said, when we first started GTU, there was definitely a lot of interest. I think at NOLA, we had 6 cars the first year that it was GTU as its own class. And just this past weekend at Barber, we have 12 cars, so double the entries since then, which is great to see that growth. Also, the modifiers have changed a little bit. Back then, we used to follow the same modifier rules as GTO, so there were some performance modifiers related to that. But now GTU is pretty much an unlimited class, which is awesome. So you're stuck right at the 9.0 to 1 power to weight limit, and there's no real modifiers behind that. So you can kind of go out there. Obviously, Sebeco offers an awesome platform right from the get go. You can take it straight from the factory, like we saw with a recent customer, go out and race it and see some success. But at the same time, if you do want to make some modifications, there aren't any power to weight modifications that WRL imposes on you for that.
Awesome. And so when you guys were out there running, obviously 2024, you saw your biggest success. What were some of the keys to success for that 2024 season? And I believe you guys took, what, 13 overall victories that year?
Yeah, it was a great year for sure. 13 overall victories and quite a few podiums as well. Obviously, we're always striving for not only class wins but the overall win because the platform is capable of it. But with endurance racing, particularly, so much of it has to do with just execution. There's so much that goes into executing a flawless race, and over 8 hours of racing on one day and 7 hours on another, it's incredibly hard to just purely execute perfectly. And so that looks like everything from pit stops without penalties, no passing under yellows, no contacts, getting through traffic consistently and cleanly, executing our driver changes without error. So there's a lot of little things that as a driver you're responsible for, but also on the team side you have to be executing, and that can happen in an instant. And so a big part of why we saw the success in 2024 was everything that we just talked about on track, as well as the prep side, just making sure that we were checking the boxes and doing everything we needed to do, and not necessarily doing anything special, but just trying to make sure we were doing our job flawlessly.
Awesome. So you said you've been running the car for a while. I guess you've figured it all out at this point, but are you guys still doing things like driver change practice? What does that look like on your end? How are you still staying at the pointy end of the field?
Well, honestly, what's nice about getting into the Sebeco and the NP01 is it kind of takes away everything in terms of the performance side out, right? There's a bunch of available information online through the forum and through Sebeco directly, and as a community between the teams where you can kind of get all of your service notes, your setup sheets, even the video data are shared within the community. So on the performance side, all that's taken. So to your point, the next step is kind of like the driver changes and the things that you wouldn't necessarily think about make a huge difference. But yes, to answer your question, we practice the driver changes every single night. We also practice as a team emergency service practice. So that way, if something does happen in the race, we know who's on top of what. Do we have the part we need to execute that and have a rhythm for going for that? And kind of back to your previous question, those are the things that make those differences because in an 8 hour race, being able to execute, a dozen driver changes that are 15 seconds faster than the next competitor does add up. And that's one lap over the course of a race. So practicing those minute things are really critical.
And I guess that's one of the things that makes WRL a little bit unique is those pit stops really matter. There's no minimum pit stop, correct?
Correct. Yeah. I mean, it's, when I did IMSA, there was minimum pit stop times for kind of the feeder classes. So we would have to come to the box, wait once service is done, and then go. Obviously, in WeatherTech, they don't have that. But similar in WRL, there is no minimum pit stop time. So it's as fast as you can get in and out of the car for a driver change, as fast as you can dump a jug of fuel with that 1 inch restrictor that they mandate, and basically all of it tying in together. Even tire changes. Tire changes are open in WRL. So you're only allowed 5 tires over the wall, so you can't have 4 wheel guns and 4 tires and look like an F1 pit stop. But still, at the same point, you're still operating as fast as you can within the rules that they provide. So all those little things make a big difference.
So do you think that provides a great training and introduction if a team is looking to go pro racing to come to WRL, get some experience, given that within that rule set, you have a lot of, essentially it's on the team to perform.
Yep. Absolutely. I think, like you mentioned, the team, the driver, all of it, I think WRL provides a platform for a team to go and learn what it looks like to be endurance racing, everything down to the driver changes, the pit stops, the fueling procedures, emergency service, calling strategy, managing full course cautions versus code 35s. You get 15 hours of experience 11 times a year. It's over 150 hours that you get to practice doing this as a team. And at a more grassroots level, that's more cost efficient than necessarily going up to a higher level. So absolutely, it's a great foundation for teams to get in and start learning how to operate in an endurance racing format. And likewise with the drivers too. Again, more than 150 hours just in pure driving time on the races, not to account for the max track time testing we got on the Thursdays, the 8 hours of open practice we got on the Fridays. So as a driver, you're getting to go to all these marquee tracks, get multi-class experience. And if you're in the Sebeco NP01, you're the fastest car on the racetrack, which is awesome too, right? So it's a fantastic opportunity for anybody trying to first get into the sport and learn how to go endurance racing. But two, you'll find it's incredibly competitive and you can live in WRL for a very long time and continue to operate and try to be that perfect endurance racing platform that you would aspire to be.
So we are here at Road Atlanta, Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta, and you saw some success here in the Pro Series with the Petit Le Mans race that's held at this track. You were in an LMP3, correct? Now, how does this sort of transition? Does WRL prepare you for a situation like that where there's multi-class racing, it's long stints? How did you prepare for that type of race and sim time, I'm assuming?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think to your point, sim time was huge to the success not only in WRL but also we won Petit Le Mans. That's big. I think tying it into WRL, we sim before every event. There's platforms on iRacing now where we have setups that mock the NP01, so you can not only get to experience the track but what the car is going to feel like before you show up. AI is now introduced into iRacing, so you can have GT4 cars, you can have cars that represent GP class cars, and you can set them to be relatively aggressive or not, and see how those interactions play out on track. So sim racing has been a huge part of that, and I would say even to the point of the extent that we had success here at Michelin Racing Road Atlanta for Petit Le Mans, WRL played a huge part in that because in the P3 class, you're not the fastest car on the racetrack, but you also have the GT class car, which makes up almost 50% of the field in WeatherTech anyway. So getting to maneuver through some of those slower class cars effectively and safely and making sure the car gets to go to the last stint without damage, a huge part of that came from my experience with WRL.
That's awesome. So for anybody looking to get into a Sebeco or really into WRL in general, I know that it may be intimidating to have a whole team, to purchase a car. I've seen some of these arrive and drive type programs. What are some ways to get involved for a driver?
I think, what I'd say personally, obviously I'm a bit biased being in the community already, but the Sebeco and the NP01 community are massively open. I would say it's an awesome community. Everybody's very open-minded, willing to help. There's a forum online that you can reach out to. There's a bunch of team owners and teams and privateers that are active members in that forum, and you can reach out through there. But within WRL and within PSSA that operate in a sprint racing format as well, there's plenty of teams and privateers that you can reach out to. You can reach out to Sebeco directly, and they'll be able to connect you with those individuals. But whether it's renting a seat, buying a car, starting your own race team, there's plenty of opportunities to get going, and the amount of support you're going to get from the community is going to help bring you up to speed very quickly.
Awesome. And you mentioned privateer teams. I guess, is it still possible for a privateer team to compete against some of the bigger teams?
Absolutely. I think a lot of it comes down to information. Obviously, it's it's very known that money is driven to sport. But however, I think what Sebeco provides is all the information needed to succeed. So again, whether that's the prep side, service intervals, checklists, part support at the track when you're at PSSA or at WRL, all of that's available for you. Setup sheets from the top teams, data and video from the top drivers. All of that's provided. So as a team that's looking to get into it, you can kind of have a plug and play platform with a community that's going to give you all the information that you need to succeed. And at that point, it's just a matter of trying to build a team around your own privateer to try to get you on the racetrack and consistently competing. But I think that's what's really unique about the community in Sebeco in general is the fact that we're willing to bring everybody up from the customer level all the way up to these teams that show up with massive race haulers.
Awesome. Well, Dakota, I appreciate your time, and you guys, if you're interested in getting on track, whether as a team owner or as a driver, just reach out. We'll be happy to connect you and fill you in with any questions you have. And again, thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.